manuals that has been recently, at least in a preliminary version, put online. It's about fonts out of context, in the sense that there's a manual about how to set up your fonts in context. This with Metaco, and this is the more technical one. But there's a couple of interesting explanations about how open type machinery in luajittex, etc., works, and how you deal with that and things like that. So if you really are using luajittex and you want to know a bit more about how the font machinery works there, you can read more in this manual. Long ago, the beginning of luajittex, I started with keeping track of development stages, and there's a PDF manual and key.pdf, and at some point when we reached stage 0.50, I froze that one. Most of that has appeared in articles in Tugboat or Goose magazine or Entity magazine or whatever, and is online somewhere. Then there was a second installment of that, it's the hybrid.pdf manual, also on the website. That one stops at version 0.75. So that's the development history of, let's say, context, luajittex, when we move to a more hybrid approach of things. And this is the third one in this series. Like it's called About, and it's about all kinds of things you can do with this new machinery. And it's also on the website. It's of course not complete. I will add stuff to it. This describes, for instance, some of the new mass trickeries. This is using one of the new things also available in the latest LM fonts, the stretchable arrow stuff that we discussed some time ago. So if you want to know a bit more about that kind of stuff, you can mass styles and how you deal with mass styles in context, but that's basically also in luajittex, things like that. Can be find that there will be more the next few years added to this one. So that's another one to keep an eye on.
Have you ever considered putting a search function on your website to search for a particular manual?
No, the website is already for close to 10 years automatically generated from XML templates and whatever. Every time that I update context, I hit the button and the website is completely regenerated, and I'm not going to change that and touch that with anything, because I have no time for that. And well, you know, the website for me, we don't even use it for advertisement. It's just meant to pick up things. So adding something to that, the garden is basically the place where you search for things.
I think a really easy but actually workable solution, it probably would work for the website, is just use like a custom Google search. You basically, just add little text block that is site, colon, and then the domain, which gets added, and basically you get search results on Google. Normal users can do that. And it's really like a no-brainer, because it's just adding one, text input, and you don't have to index it. And Google indexes, PDFs, does everything. So basically, it's just a
shortcut to your the subdomain, basically. Yeah. Okay, I can look into that. Okay, so also a bit as an introduction to Luigi. We will say something about probably mostly Zwickler, but maybe also about luajittex and all the speed-related things. I will now spend some words on speed. Why is speed important? There's an article in the proceedings about this. I find myself, if you code your documents in text, you basically never need to run text, because you have a sort of neutral markup. You can trust the system that it comes out the way you want, which in many cases is the case. And let's say in all our automated workflows, I never check output. I assume it's okay. So then you just deal with the content. But on the other hand, develop stuff, or for instance, if you make a manual, I always spend a lot of time on making a nice cover, and that's a real, it's a bit the same as if you are making this style for a thing. You are in a constant review cycle, and then it's really important that you have a very fast edit-run preview cycle. So then, even running something for 2 seconds is already too much. Yeah? So speed matters in this case. Although I agree that if you spend most of the time writing, then it doesn't matter much if you have to spend a few seconds, of course, on the web. Another aspect is that, the more interfacing you add, the slower things get, especially in text. It has to interpret all kinds of things, and then it gets slower. On the other hand, if you look at the average style, there's not so much to set up. For instance, take the things that you were showing about these floats with captions aside. Those are basically few liners in context. Yeah, so there's only 6 commands that get interpreted. That takes virtually no time. Yeah, so even if this command does a lot of things, it's only exercised a few times. So speed, again, is not really an issue there. So you can make nice interfaces and still be fast. Then there's a problem of functionality in a macro package. If you look at context, it has a lot of functionality. And nowadays, a lot of functionality is done in Lua. And the more you do, the more runtime it takes. And
Surprise, surprise.
surprise, surprise. Yeah. On the other hand, you can make sure that if something is not used, that at least the additional overhead involved in that is not present. Take something like, let's say an example, kerning. Let's say that you are kerning between characters. You want to have a wider thing. This is not present in the tech engine. I do this at the Lua level. So I do a run over, let's say, a paragraph. I know which things need to be, have additional kerning in between there. And on this stretch I apply this feature. But if I would turn it on for the whole document, it would have to consult and check everything. Yeah? Now there are ways to make sure that you only check the things that really matter. But nevertheless, the fact that you have turned it on means that checking is taking place, means additional pass over the node list, means to slow down. So if you have 50 of such mechanisms, you can imagine that it makes a difference. Yeah? Now you can collapse everything into one big routine, but that gives unreadable code, so you're not going to do that. So there's something like, okay, the more you ask, the slower it will get, because there's something that I won't speed up or optimize or whatever. And collapse or condense, simply because it becomes unmaintainable. I'll give you another example. If you take, for instance, Idris Advanced Husseini font, which has about 200 features of optimizing the look and feel of something Arabic, you can imagine that for one sentence you have maybe 100,000 lookups and things like that going on, all being done in Lua or whatever. That's a lot of function calls, that's a lot of processing, that's a lot of slow down. On the other hand, in context I think it's reasonably fast. It's not really a big deal. But you have to keep in mind that if you do that kind of thing, the more you ask, the more you get. On the other hand, if you know that something very advanced happens, you are probably more willing to accept the speed penalty. But anyway, when I write something, I need to keep in mind that users will probably use everything. Lots of, especially local tweets, say you begin a group, you enter a group. In the worst case, inside this group, a lot of stuff gets set up, which is forgotten after the group. And the next time you do it, it has to be set up again, etc., etc. You can also slow down things. Users probably are not aware of that kind of thing. Let's give an example. In tech, traditionally, a font system is complex. Why is that? If you take the average font, you're talking about a regular, let's say an italic or a big, a bold and a bold italic. That's 4 fonts. Okay, that's not much. But in traditional text setup, you easily add 15 mask fonts that are part of the whole setup because there is a relationship between small and large and whatever. And then all these techies expect that if they have chosen a font, that they also have a fast way of having a smaller font. Yeah, so there's normally a whole system of maybe one body font switch in theory can lead to 20 or 25 font initializations and setups. Now, if you are making a title page, let's say of a journal, you know what fonts are there, so it's far more easy to just define the fonts. You use them once. You don't set up and switch a whole font system. You just do that kind of stuff. Title pages are good examples of that. Chapter headings and things like that too. You only basically need the whole relational font system if you know that in the title there's a mixed setup that mass can occur in a title page. Then you need to have a bit of it. On the other hand, in context we have always optimized that kind of stuff. So the penalty of font switches is not that large, and in luajittex it's even pretty close to neglectable nowadays, I think. But nevertheless, choosing the wrong mechanism and the wrong setup at the wrong moment for macros that are expanded, let's say, hundreds of thousands of times, can slow down your rep. Anyway, it all boils down. There was a time that users tend to say context is slow, and it especially say context is slow compared to, for instance, LaTeX, which of course is true because LaTeX has a very small kernel, it starts up and loads afterwards. Yeah, but if you don't load too much, it's fast. Context, on the other hand, has everything built in, so it takes some time to start up. But if you want additional things, it doesn't need extra time. It's a bit of a trade-off, depending on what you do. Nevertheless, there is something like what I would call the baseline performance of a system. When we started with luajittex, one of the first things I figured out was that if you use a complete text tree, that loading the file database in capacity already took a second. So initialization of the text system took a second. So the first thing I wrote is my own file searching and handling mechanism, which is compatible in Lua, and it took 0.2 seconds. So it was 5 times faster than the C variant. Nowadays it takes even less. So that's one thing. You have already one second in startup time. Other initialization things are loading or preloading fonts or whatever. I think nowadays the load up time is close to neglectable. On this 6-year-old laptop it's half a second. And on my next one, which I will install next week, is probably a quarter of that. Anyway, the first impression one gets from the test run is what I say, the baseline performance. Yeah? How much time does it take to process simple things? But what I'm constantly doing is identifying, optimizing critical routines. It doesn't make sense to optimize something that is used seldomly. It makes sense to optimize those things that are used frequently. For instance, font handling is one of these. It doesn't matter what machine you have. This is an old Dell M90, it's not the fastest machine. It also depends on what version of luajittex you have. There are differences between luajittex version and, of course, context. Now, you might wonder, why is a machine important? If you look at the last decade, you can see an instant increase in speed. Yeah? Every few years, if you bought a laptop, it was twice as fast. If you now buy a laptop, it's not twice as fast. You can forget about it. In the worst case, it's even slower. You can have more cores running at a lower speed, and tech benefits from one core at a high speed. Yeah?
But the machine will be much thinner. That's important.
Yes. And the other thing, and I can throw it away later because I can't replace the batteries. Yeah? And then I have a new one which is again slower. Yeah. So let's say that you see the same thing in web applications. If you have a workflow where tech runs on a server, yeah, and you have to decide what server you buy, it makes more sense to have less cores at a higher speed than many cores at a lower speed, although the many cores will of course be much nicer for web applications, which, well, if you have to serve lots of requests, then speed is less important course speed is less important, definitely memory and disk and others. The same is true for SSD. I upgraded at some point this machine with an SSD. Of course you think, okay, let's hope it will be much faster. Of course it's not faster, because operating systems do caching so well nowadays that only the first test run, your initial test run, you really see it like taking many seconds to load all stuff. But successive runs are, everything is cached, doesn't make a difference. Of course SSD matters if you have a workflow where you have lots of big graphics that need to be loaded, saved on disk, because PDF files are not saved on disk, things like that, then it matters again. But that's on the average technical run not important. Okay, so this is a simple test. I just create 1,000 pages with the word test. This runs in base mode, what we call in base mode in context. There's hardly any open type feature processing going on. It's very simple. Nothing kicks in. This is the baseline. Just to give an impression. So, my unit is pages per second. That's normally what I measure. So if something is really bad, then I see that drop down. So if I process one page, I can do, the number of pages is 1, I can do 2 pages per second. And it's more or less constant, you can see. Only startup time matters there. Startup time, load a couple of fonts, initialization and keep getting out of it. If I do 10 pages, we are getting towards the amount of an article, a small article. Generally 50 pages per second, April and May 70 pages per second. That is startup time, doing the thing, saving the PDF, getting out. You might say, okay, that's not so much, 15 pages per second, but it's quite okay. 100 pages, you see that it increments, so the startup time takes less in relation to all other things. Interesting is that we see an increase in time. This has to do, I will mention it later, with optimization I've done in luajittex. This is about the same. Here we get even more pages. Here we see again a difference, and there I think it's probably the faster output to the screen. The console output, the one character by one character text console output that I mentioned in the previous talk, that got improved, that was better. And at 10,000 pages, Now, if I do the same experiment with luajittex, it's not so much faster, because at this stage this is purely text what you're seeing. There's not so much lua involved, but it is slightly higher. I tested it on my college machine, which is 1-year-old Dell, and it's an i5 processor, and I got something like 400 pages per second in the last case. So you still get some improvement, but that's about, I expect for my next machine to end up something at, let's say, 10,000 case at 500-600 pages per second, and that's about probably what we can get from tech and technology, and there will not be much more to gain here. Yeah.
The much more impressive figure, I think, if you want to use it for your advertising or whatever, is 1 million pages per hour.
We have 1 million pages per hour. Yeah, okay, but that takes time a while to test.
Well, it's with 289 pages per second, you end up with more than 1 million.
Could be.
Yes.
Well, the test takes an hour.
You test.
Okay, so what actually happens? If you think of it, we have to face it. If you look at what modern operating systems do with graphics on the screen and all that kind of stuff, and games do, this is dead slow, of course. Yeah. No matter what, if you see what happens currently. But we are dealing with interpreted systems, interpreted lua and interpreted text. So we load a whole bunch of macros. I think the format file is in package format, zipped. Basically the format is zipped in some 8 megabytes. We load a lot of lua core modules, 150 or something like that, and we initialize them. Then, as soon as you are going to type the first page, no font is loaded fallback font will kick in, otherwise you set up a font. There's a slight difference between loading font. LM fonts, I think, take slightly more loading time than, for instance, a déjà vu set. So, but this next is close to neglectable. So, if you are making a style, it really makes sense to set up your font as soon as possible, because otherwise you have the danger that as soon as something from a font is needed, there's I need a measure or whatever. I don't have a font. I load some kind of default, and then you have a font set loaded twice, and one of them you don't use. Okay, that will cost you 0.02 of a second. Neglectable in a normal workflow, but maybe not in every one. System can initialize fonts and languages. Languages are loading on demand, so there's not much penalty in there. A couple of additional runtime files. By default, context loads a couple of files where you can put your patches and things like that. Also neglectable. And then the typeset typeset. And this is a process that's stepwise. So you typeset the text, then the text gets passed to the page builder. The page builder is always the bottleneck, because that's where you start boxing stuff, putting stuff on front, and at the bottom you end up with copying boxing. Copying is an expensive operation, yeah. And the context page builder is pretty advanced. So that's why traditionally context was much slower than the other macro system, because it has a rather advanced page builder with layers and things like that, and multiple areas and the whole stuff. On the other hand, nowadays stuff only kicks in when it's used, so there's a lot of optimization done there. Then these pages are more or less packaged and finalized. Think in context Mark IV of resolving all the color and other things in there, and you get a PDF stream. That's part of that process. The thing is that as soon as you're packaging page, you use the global state of your document. That is sounds a bit complex, but it boils down to say that you have a document set up in 12 points, and you have a running text that is done in 10 points, some kind of intermezzo. The page is split in between, so text is then in 10-point state. And in order to get everything around it, right, headers, footers, whatever you have, you need to go back to 12-point state. You need to restore the global state. That's always kind of expensive. Anyway, if you don't do that, there's no. I already mentioned PDF. That is more or less interwoven in the whole process. It's created and is flushed to the output file. This is a sequential process. I can imagine it in some kind of future situation that we can make something like, we have this text stream, we delegate it to another process to make the PDF. On the other hand, it's always kind of going the other way around if you talk about references and things like that. So I'm not sure if we gain anything there. And each of these steps can have its own bottlenecks that you can. The more we do, the more Lua gets involved. I already mentioned that. I think if you talk about this manual that I showed, the font menu or whatever, you easily get 50% Lua. There are a couple of things that we can do if you write macros to speed up processing. One of them is to avoid copying boxes. Copying boxes it's easy to do, \copy, yeah? But you seldom need it. And if you can avoid it, if you think like, oh, let's play safe and use a copy, maybe I need it later on. But if you don't need it, don't do it, because it's a costly operation in terms of runtime. Especially if in output routine there's a lot of that happen in packaging phases. Another optimization that I have is I only enable initialization and finalizers when functionality is used. Take color. If you don't use color in your document, there's no need to set up the color system to pass anything to PDF, to finalize certain resources like transparency resources or things like that. Forget about it, not needed, turn it off. As soon as you use one color in your document, you're toast, every page we have to check if the things are still set up right. Because, you know, at that level in the back end, the system doesn't know if you have done something and the page is broken in between. I already mentioned, be clever with fonts. Don't use, say if you have 10 sizes, don't define 10 body font environments and 10 body fonts, which involves all these setups. Just cleverly use fonts. This only matters in workflows where you produce lots of documents and need high performance, because then you can really save seconds. There's in context, there are several mechanisms that need multiple passes. For instance, there are now 2 table mechanisms. Actually, there's 3 table mechanisms, tabulate also, but let's say 2 table mechanisms that behave a bit like HTML tables. And then you always need an analyzer space. You know, what do I get? What are the constraints? And then you can do the typesetting. That means that you basically typeset things twice. You do something, analyze it, make decisions, set up the next run, and reprocess it. And already for quite some time, Context does that kind of thing in trial mode. So there's a trial mode, and there are quite some features that you can just turn off in trial mode, like color or graphics. You don't have to basically load the graphic, or several other things that you can just turn off if you are in trial mode. And that really speeds up processing. Again, maybe not in the average run, but if you, and these are really the cases that I have to deal with, if you have a 25-page very complex table that needs to be broken across a page, then it makes sense if you can shear off a few seconds. This is a rather special one. I don't know how many of you have ever run or used the command tracing all.
Yes.
That can be very verbose.
Yeah.
It's no problem to get gigabyte files, well, many gigabyte files.
Yes.
Yeah. There are ways, if you write macros, to make sure that, you know, if something is not used, make sure that it doesn't end up in your expansion, because it can save you many bytes if you don't see stuff getting expanded in this log that is irrelevant and never used. But I spent quite some time on getting that right, so it means that the log files, especially if we do tracing all, are reasonably of reasonable size. And even every time that I have to use it and I run into something new, I try to optimize that bit. It's not so much a performance issue, but mostly a convenience issue. It really helps if you don't have to find an editor that can load a 10 gigabyte file and still not block and freeze your system. Even this is one of the few occasions that I use VI, because it can handle very big files. Even VI can freeze 10 gigabytes. And also, in the end, if nothing helps, you just have to accept that more functionality has a price. On the other hand, the following is also, I don't sacrifice functionality because I want to gain speed. That's also not an issue. And of course, avoid too obscure code. Yeah? The more you optimize it, the more obscure you can get. And then you end up with, if there's a bug, well, you basically have to write it again because you couldn't decipher what you were doing. This is also one to avoid. You can, for instance, say that you have to do a parse over the node list. And after that you have to do another parse over the node list to do something else. Then you can say, okay, let's use one loop, yeah, and do both. Apart from introducing complications, it also means that you have now, if you have to debug it, you have to debug two different mechanisms at the same time. You can probably gain some speed in there, forget about it. It's not worth the effort. Okay, this was a bit what I wanted to say about speed. There's more in the proceedings about this. One thing, when I started out with this was 2006 or 7, I think we started with it. There was a situation that we had PDF tags, we had C tags, and then we had luajittex coming up. PDF that was acceptable. Well, personally, so PDF that is not too fast, in my opinion. But of course, when you do a CTEC run, which I only do when I generate formats for simple things because I never really used the system, I already noticed that, oh, PDF that is not that slow. Because it was, let's say, 2 times faster than CTEC at last. Okay, you can say to yourself, is there a reason for that? Does it make sense you to stick to PDF that? Well, the answer is very simple. The CTEC, you got Unicode, open type fonts, and whatever. Simple as that. 32-bit has a price compared to 8-bit. Yeah? So, yes, it's slower, but you get what you ask for. You get it back in functionality. On the other hand, it could at some points be faster in the sense that instead of loading 55 fonts, you have to load 5 fonts, and that can sometimes make a big difference. Yeah? That's the nice thing of open type. Okay, so I already had this when we started with luajittex, like, okay, let's accept that it's slower. Then we made the decision to split the code base from Mark II to Mark IV. If you look at the Mark and Hibbert manuals, you will see occasionally timings about how fast things are. I can say that in the meantime, the Mark IV run is as fast as a Mark II run in PDF text. And the more complex the document gets, the faster luajittex comes out of this. So, for speed, there's absolutely no reason to use the PDF text Mark II component. Then there's of course a discussion about we use Lua and Lua libraries. So is Lua and Lua libraries slower than CTEC and C libraries? Yeah? Now one of the reasons to go the luajittex way is that we somehow want to stay independent. There is always control, we want to say somehow to be independent, to not put stuff in the engine that is debatable and might change over time. So that's a choice for Lua, but there's a price because it's the interpreted language. Last time I measured, the luajittex font processing written completely in Lua was as fast and maybe even faster than in CTEC. I think it's very hard to compare because CTEC runs on Mark II. I think the average processing of the completely written in C machinery and partly written in C and Lua machinery is comparable. This has to do with the fact that Lua as a scripting language is very well suited for everything that deals with strings and things like that. And there you get back a little bit. And of course Mark IV is much more optimized. So, in the end, I think that we more or less have reached the moment that we can say that the Mark IV luajittex combi is a pretty more or less stable and fast replacement for the old stuff. And that's what I mentioned in the previous talk, probably also the moment that we can start thinking of just coming up with a pure luajittex Mark IV based distribution. More or less, I'm not saying archive the old stuff, but I'm not sure how many users even use the old stuff anymore. And instead of saying that we move on, we can say that we have moved on. So that's about what I wanted to say about this. So now we go to the luajittex Swiklik story.
So we are ahead of time.
20.